So in this small demo, we will be discussing about the line operation, including single and multi-point transfers. Now, in this demo, we will be discussing about line manufacturing or continuous manufacturing, batch manufacturing or discrete, or item registration or stock taking, where we have extra material that needs to be consumed. Now, based on the example that was cited, uh, we have broken it down in these three parts. Now, let's go into the example. Now, here are the three different examples. One is line production, one is batch production, stock taking. Now, line production has a certain extra fields which needs to be captured. For example, the ordered target, ordered actual, batch target, and batch actuals, which differs from the line production. Now, the whole idea of having this example is to try and map the fields. They may be differently named in the system, but they do represent the same data. And the sender list and the receiver list, and how our data can interact with the rest of the mechanism, and what type of data can be pulled and pushed. So this is one example, although we cannot match an exact example onto the system as of now, but we have tried to make the process as close as possible. So let's go into the system now. Now, when we talk about the system, this is a typical D365 information grid. Now, in this information grid, we can see the production order number, what type of reference it is, which item is being produced, what's its name, if there is a variant of that item, if there is a variant in configuration, size, color, style, that is captured. The site, warehouse, even the location is captured. Now, some of the locations are not updated because they are in the create stage. We can give the locations. Similarly, the required quantity, the unit of measure, order date, delivery date, requested date, delays, and what action to be taken, and so on. Now, this is a planned production order view, which is the view before it becomes a production order. Now, I have multiple views open over here on my D365. Now, the whole idea of showing you the planned production order view, the production order view, very similar to the same, where we have the production order number, the item number, and the sites and the warehouse and the location where it is going, the quantity, the finished quantity as the current status of the quantity, which we can say the actuals and the target quantity. Then if we go ahead and see, it can show us the reference type also, that what is the type of production order that is being done. Now, based on the status, the same is captured over here. Let me just go ahead and remove this bottom here. Now, this view is my all production orders view. Now, to add to the example that we have been given over here on the Excel, we can see that we need the line production, the date, the time, the line ID, the order ID, the production ID, the target quantity, the actual quantity, batch number, which is always 0, and the unit of measure. So all these information is already available in my grid view of the production order itself. And if more field is required for the information, we can get the same information also. Now, how? We can just right click over here and insert columns. Now, when we do an insert column, it allows me to pick any field that is associated to that production order and get it displayed over here. Now, for an example, we want to know the line number on which this production will happen. The line number can be mapped onto the route number, which is the route which this production will pick up, and we can map the same, and we can have the value shown right on my grid. over here as route numbers. Now you can see all the route numbers which have been formed, which are going through a certain stage, have been populated. The ones which are in the created stage or in the just initially scheduled state, they have not picked up any route numbers against them. So all these route numbers are formed and their operations are going on. At the same time, I can have all these information on a flat file in the curated manner which NFM wants, whether it will be CSV or non-CSV or an Excel and so on. Now I can take this whole data in one click to my Excel also, where I can open it in Microsoft. Now it will ask whether I want to import it into an Excel or I want to use it directly on Excel. Now if I even import this to Excel, I can download this particular file and open it up. Let me just share the file. Here it is. Now, although it's not a flat file, but since I am using the front end of my system to derive this file, it gives me in a filtered format. It's in a normal Excel format. So I can generate it in an Excel format directly, but saying that I can generate it, that means I can also allow a batch at the background to go ahead and keep generating these files of information. So I can capture this information with my data management process also. Now data management is within D365, where I can import, export data and in any of the formats that we want to. So for example, if I open up any export entity, if I go into any entity, now by entity we mean there are multiple tables. Now when we are referring to the production order table, there will be a production order table which we can select, and at the same time the target data format we can select as AX operations call colon separated Unicode, CSV Unicode, and there are multiple formats which we can actually use. So Microsoft gives you a whole plethora of source files which you can use and generate to export, or at the same time import. For example, if I have any import records, if I want to import any kind of record, for example, if I create an import job over here with a description of job to run, and I add the data entity which I want, the source data format, I can keep any. So my import and export of data to D365 is facilitated with any kind of data format that you can give. So yes, that is there. The data import export framework is pretty much the same as we are working with. Now this flat file that we want it to generate, either we can put it under a batch. For example, if I go into the planned order, now these are the system generated planned order based on the master planning that has run. Here I am using a dynamic plan which is for a short-term period. So I am running for a short-term plan, and whatever information I am getting on my planned production order, I am getting, on my production orders, I am also getting on my planned production order also. So I am getting all the information that is needed before even my production order is getting created. The item number, the number of the planned production order and so on. But yes, I am not getting my production order number. But at the same time, the functionality that I want to show you, where we can add a batch to our standard processing. For example, if a production supervisor or a planner basically goes ahead and firms all these production orders, then he can automate it by firming it all by pressing this button, or he can automate just by clicking on the firm and putting on the batch. Now these batches can be put into recurrence. So I can put a recurrence batch which will keep on firming these orders every hour, day, week, month, year. And the same batches can be used to extract data or push data in. So for extracting the data from the CSV file that we are talking about in the example where we have the sender list and the receiver list and so on, we can see all these data that is required, that is order ID, product ID, the actual quantity from the sender list, which will keep on repeating based on the comma separated or a colon separated value of the phrase starting from multiple bin IDs. Of course, we can maintain multiple bin IDs because bin IDs are locations within the system, and the system is configured in a way where you can see its inventory breakdown structure in a way that site, warehouse, location can be formed. At the same time, we can break down the small aisles into aisle, rack and bin and so on. So even the last bin can be captured. We can see how this warehouses are controlled and how the hierarchy looks like, and how many locations are under it, and all these details and multiple picking locations can be configured within the system, where also I can maintain in the warehouse management, in the advanced warehouse management system, I can maintain location directives. So if I go into the setup, I go into location directives. Here, for sales order picking and putting, for transfer order pick and put, for multiple pick and put during productions, I can maintain multiple order types. So based on this finished goods put away, for example, if I put the finished goods put away, I can create an automated job which will go and check these warehouses based on my location directives, based on the sequences I kept. So if this is a one-time setup, if I go ahead and do this setup, even my stock transfers becomes simplified, where we can see these production orders. We can pull out all these data through an Excel sheet or run the batch to export this data every 5 minutes and so on, and feed it into a common directory from where these files are extracted. Now similarly, my import functionality also accepts multiple file types, and at the same time all these production orders are facilitated with a function called picking list. So now whenever I highlight into any of these production orders and I go into the view, I can see the picking list. Now this picking list contains all the details about the quantity, the items, how much was the proposed and how much was the consumed, both the differences, and what is their lot IDs, what are the item numbers, what is the date, who has posted it, and so on. And so this data can also be mapped out into the Excel format, where we are looking at the stock taking, where we are looking at the bin ID again, which is the location. The production ID is tagged to the picking list, the new quantity, the production ID, and the previous quantity. So yes, that is also getting covered. But the only thing where we need to have a check or a look while we are solutioning the whole thing would be that how do we want this interaction of the flat files to be, and how much of the data do we need, because whatever we see in this Excel, we have the same data. We can have multiple bin IDs from where these can be fed into the lines, and multiple receiving IDs from multiple bin IDs also at the same time. And the batch production also, of course, will be facilitated with the batch ID, which is created while you are doing the batch picking. For example, now if we go into any of these production orders with a batch number, here you will see Most of these don't have a batch number, but this one has a batch number because this is a batched production order. And the difference we can see itself if we go into the production control over here, and if we see the production reference of in the planned production orders or on the production orders anywhere, you will see planned batch orders, planned production orders. Now the batch orders are the ones which will run with batches, the production orders are the ones which will run with or without a serial number, and so on. So if I go into the production order, if I see this batch number initiated to it, I can also check what batch number does it belong to and what is the batch quantity for this. Now if I click on this batch, it will show me more details about it, and also it will give me data about what is the quantity that was expected and how much it is there right now, and so on. So all these details are there. You can go into the on hand. In case it has an on hand, it will show you how much quantity it has. So basically what we are saying is the data that is needed over here for stock taking can also be regulated with the prod ID, their quantity, the batch numbers, even non-batch controlled, and so on. So yes, the same can be triggered. Batch order numbers, yes, they can also be triggered and captured. At the same time, on the line production orders, we can keep a track of the line ID by keeping a track of the route group or the route ID which is being taken. The order ID is of course a default, and hence facilitating the data management of import and export through multiple file system, and at the same time maintaining our model group, which is basically how the inventory or the item should behave. Because yes, we have seen that NFM has also asked that it should follow a FIFO or a non-FIFO methodology. So that does not depend upon the lot ID, but it does depend on the item. So every item is facilitated with the type of methodology it will follow, whether it will follow FIFO, LIFO, moving average but no physical standards or a standard cost, and so on. So it is on the item level where we are defining this movement, and so it is at the same time getting translated into the transactions too in the same way. Hence the system is filled with this logic of item model group, where you can assign whether it should be FIFO, LIFO, and so on. And even you can have more controls where even you can control the FIFO and how it should behave, whether we are posting the physical inventory, whether registration is required for it or not, receiving requirements are there or not, picking requirements are there or not, and so on. So we can modify, customize, and keep it the way we want to. So all these inventory model groups are available, and we can attach it to every item, and the item will follow the same methodology across the system, across the transactions, whether it's a production picking list, transfer picking list, or sales picking list, and so on. And in covering these scenarios, the stock taking process, again using the picking list on the production orders with the same information, as well as the internal transfers that happen, can be done between the locations, between the warehouses, various warehouses that are there. Now if I go into any of these transfer orders, for example in the inventory management, I can control these transfer orders through work, where I can release this work onto my warehouse. The shop floor people will come to know that this transfer order has been released, and they can go ahead and pick these items and put it into another warehouse or a location where shipping is required or not. In case shipping is not required, it is within the location, we can pass a journal. In case it requires a forklift and so on, we can transfer it using a transfer order within the system. Now this transfer can be facilitated with loads, where a load is carried or a shipment is carried and then picked and put and finally received at the receiving location. Hence, transfer orders are capable of addressing your in-house transfers. At the same time, it is also capable of transferring further places where you have multiple shipments, and it has the capacity to go ahead and track these individual shipments as well as create multiple inbound and outbound work and shipments and waves and so on. Now the solutioning can be multiple. We can create multiple work templates where the work is created automatically and distributed based on the logic. Now for the work order type, transfer issue or transfer receipt, we can keep automated transfers and so on, where the picks and puts happens automatically based on our handheld devices that we will have. Hence, stock taking internally as well as within the current operation can be done. Now, the final view is the production operation view, where this current operation view also gives me which operation is in that particular production order is in, as well as what is their consumption type, what is the good quantity, what is the hours utilized, and these are all basically your operations and the resources that it is eating. So this resource groups production unit can be defined based on the machine that is being used, based on the human resource that is being used, and even if there is a subcontracted vendor that who is doing these work can be maintained in this current operations view. And exactly the same way, I can also transfer this whole data into an Excel, and I can slice and dice the same thing. I can even export and import this data again, as I showed you earlier, through the data management system, where I can generate a CSV file and keep feeding it on through a batch which I attach for recurrence for multiple times. So yes, the possibilities are of course there, just that we will have to align that how we are going to formulate the final solution. So that's it for the line production as of now. The capabilities are there. If needed, we can explore more into it and simplify it more. Thank you. Thanks a lot.